Changing scales completely, our second home is proof that you don't need millions to build an architectural gem.
We've ditched the boat for something a little less showy, to head for one of Miami's oldest and more modest districts, Spring Garden.
Gosh, really nice.
Going over the river, so we're going onto another little island.
And it's changed completely, hasn't it, the atmosphere? I mean, this is old Florida, really.
We've gone back in time. We've crossed a bridge and gone back in time. So tropical, this street.
So tropical, isn't it? Beautiful, mature trees. This neighbourhood goes back to the mid-19th century, but some of these mature trees were here long before the buildings. Here we are in the jungle.
The suburban jungle, it's extraordinary, isn't it, to walk. Here we are. It's the perfect house for this part of the world.
Self-built by the two architects who live here, Brillhart House may be one of the more modest homes we've seen, but it's an architectural heavyweight that sits lightly in its landscape and draws upon a rich heritage.
I think it's absolutely adorable, and I love the fact that you can see all the tropical trees behind it. I mean, it's like a sort of tea plantation house, isn't it?
It is. I think that's because they are also simple buildings that deal with climate in the most straightforward way. It's also very archetypal. I mean, I can tell this is an architect's house because I think they're playing with this notion of the simple pavilion that architects have been playing with for 70 or 80 years, which looked at the houses that existed and said, we don't really need all that stuff. We don't need conventional front doors and porches and all the trappings of houses that we're so used to. I mean, it's all veranda, this house. The architect's real desire here was to build a home that felt connected to its surroundings.
The house is single-storey, raised on a platform 1.5 metres above the ground. Full-width glazing front and back enclose a large open-plan living area to one side with 2 bedrooms to the other. A central corridor or breezeway separates the shared and private spaces, containing the open-plan kitchen and linking the 2 verandas. The back is open to overlook the lush, verdant garden, but for privacy and cooling, the front is louvered. And Piers is right. This is all about the veranda, and coming straight in here, this wonderful area is lit by the sunlight just coming through these lovely shutters. And when you open it, you get the wonderful view of the palm trees and the fabulous tropical garden.
Behind those shutters is a transparent glass home with large spaces that are light and adaptable. The whole house is less than 150 square metres, but the deep verandas add half as much outdoor living space again. And because your eye is drawn to the landscape beyond, this home feels more than generous.
It's wonderful to be able to walk straight in from the outside through the veranda and into this space.
This has no boundary or definition which a room typically has, but I'd say it's far better for it because, of course, this feels like a piece of landscape with the air rushing through it.
It does. It's wonderful that you look out into the garden and you're sort of floating above the surface, above the planting. I mean, it's almost like being on board ship, isn't it?
I very much enjoy that sense of touching the ground very lightly indeed.
The owners are architects Jacob and Melissa Brillhart, who live here with their baby daughter, Sims.
As architects, merely designing a house was never going to test them too much. Their challenge here was to build it as well. It seems like it was a house that was designed so you could construct it yourself.
Absolutely. Everything that we built was thought about in design vis-a-vis construction. For example, the beams are 50 feet long. There's 6 of them that run the base of the floor here, and I knew that's what would fit on an 18-wheeler, and we could get to the site without too much hassle.
And when you, as an architect, bought this land and designed this house, was it a complex process to arrive at something so simple?
Yes, it was. I mean, the house is 1,500 square feet interior space, and my wife is an architect too, Melissa, and to get both of us to agree and to boil down the essence into what we really needed, it was very difficult.
And what did Melissa bring?
Sensibility, reality.
To root the house in its context, Jacob and Melissa looked to an architectural style that developed in Florida 70 years ago.
We were interested in this idea of living in the landscape and looking at glass pavilions, so we turned to tropical modernism as kind of a point of reference, for sure.
What is that?
So the South Florida architects from the 50s and 60s.
Did that test you and Melissa, or...?
Yes. Yeah, yes, it does. The thing that tests, I think tested us the most is the time it takes to get it the way it needs to be. And making a real pure lightweight box is actually much harder than it looks, and you have to take into account where things line up and thickness of structural members and if the bolts are going to protrude, and all of these things start to become real.
It seems simple, but it's really...
It doesn't seem simple to me.
There was a point where I was just, ready to be done with it.
Can't we just buy a condo?
Yes, exactly.
You learn so much. I've made so many mistakes and had great successes with this project, but my gosh, it's the time. It just takes time.
What's your overwhelming sort of emotion about it? Because it's a lot of love's gone into it, hasn't it?
A lot of love has gone into it, and it feels like a home now. And on the few occasions when it gets cold enough in Miami, we light a fire, and otherwise it's nice to sit outside on the front porch. And now it's just, all we want to do is just enjoy it.
Brillhart House is in some ways an homage to the idea of an American modernist home. Regardless of who built it, it's also extraordinary for its purity and apparent simplicity. You found a spot, haven't you?
I have, this lovely old rattan chair. And I was just admiring the fact that those curtains are made out of sacking, of sackcloth.
Whether it's sackcloth, whether it's plywood, the more basic the material, the nicer it is.
And that's certainly true in this house, isn't it? It's a very simple material, but it's used beautifully, and that's what makes the difference.
It is. I mean, there's nothing much here that you don't need. I mean, I'd probably have a bit less. I mean, I'd just roll out a bedroll out on this deck, have the platform, shelter from the sun and the rain, and nothing else. I'd get rid of everything in the middle.
So for Piers Taylor, less is more.
Caroline's right. This subtle, modest and beautiful home that is delicately placed in this lush landscape is my kind of paradise.